Over the years, our beautiful city, Washington, D.C., has developed into a large, multicultural society. There are so many career opportunities that draws people to this beautiful DMV area. Tourists travel from far and near to see the National Monument, the Lincoln Memorial, and many historical museums. And you can find any type of food you desire in these diverse localities. But underneath all the beautiful and charmed attractions, there's people like you and I that struggle from day to day with normal issues. There's also people in the DMV area that suffer from anxiety, PTSD, depression, and other mental health issues. Some issues are caused by traumatic incidents, and some issues are caused from daily situations that we find ourselves stumbling into just by living our normal lives. We are often taught as children to watch what you say or don't talk too much. But right now and today, we are stopping the silence. DMV Madam D is here to tell you you are not alone. And this is your platform to help stop the silence. We will discuss daily issues in which we all struggle with as regular people who simply just want to live in content and comfortable in our normal lives. Do not feel the need to keep your mouth covered about your emotions and feelings. It's okay to not be okay. So uncover your mouth, DMV, and welcome Madam D in Stopping the Silence.
Welcome to another episode of Stopping the Silence, and we're so excited to have Mr. Taj Deshawn with us, all the way from Texas. Hi, welcome to Stopping the Silence.
Hey, Madam D, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here with you today.
Well, thank you. Thank you for accepting the invitation. So tell us who you are. What are you all about?
Yeah, so my name is Taj Deshawn. As you mentioned, I am an athlete career transition coach. I help athletes transition powerfully into the next stages of their life after they're done playing their sport. I have a podcast called Thrive After Sports. My book is called Thrive After Sports. You see it in the background. I got it right here too. And then I also just recently came out, myself and 20 other athletes turned entrepreneurs. We came out with this book called Athlete to Entrepreneur. So I'm an author, I'm a speaker, I'm an athlete transition coach. I'm also vice president of the publishing company that helped me publish my book. So I help other athletes publish their books now through self-publish in 30 days. So I wear a few different hats, but that's who I am and that's what I'm about.
Okay, so tell us about your books. The first one.
The first one, Thrive After Sports, is really, I like to say it's my coaching program in book format. So I didn't want to write an autobiography. You know, nobody cares where I was born and how I grew up and, you know, what my favorite school snack was and all that type of stuff. So I didn't want to write just like, I didn't want it to be all about Taj. I wanted it to be where someone, not just athletes, it's for athletes, obviously, but, you know, with what's going on in the world right now, of course, a lot of us are in transition and trying to figure out what's next. So my goal is for someone to pick up that book, and by the time they put it down, they know exactly what they want to do, how they want to do it, why they want to do it, and then they're connecting with the right people to help them get there along the way. So that's what Thrive After Sports is about.
What about the second one?
The second one came together because we were just being creative at Self-Publish in 30 Days, the publishing company I mentioned, and trying to figure out ways to give as many people as possible the opportunity to become published authors. And so we came up with this concept called Athlete to Entrepreneur. Excuse me. I need to take a sip of water.
Okay.
I'm not getting emotional, y'all. Don't worry. I'm just, I've been talking a lot this morning. So
I understand.
You know how it goes.
Mm-hmm.
But Athlete to Entrepreneur, we came up with that concept because we wanted to give people the opportunity to become published authors. And I felt that there's a lot of people in my circle who are former athletes who are doing great things in the world in terms of entrepreneurship and building businesses. And so I wanted to come together, myself and 20 other former athletes turned entrepreneurs. We each contributed one chapter. So if you think about it, it's kind of like a chicken soup for the soul type of book, where everyone writes a chapter. We come together to create one project. And the goal of the book is to show that next generation of athletes coming up behind us, like, you don't have to be LeBron James, you don't have to be Magic Johnson. You can be an everyday person. You could go to a school that no one's even heard of where you played your sport at, but you can still take that athletic mindset and carry it with you into business and entrepreneurship. So that's the goal of the Athlete's Entrepreneur book.
Okay. So the first one, how difficult do you think it is for athletes to kind of transition out of being an athlete and to just living a regular life?
Very difficult. I know I struggled with it myself. We were talking about this earlier this morning before we started recording, where I had a very rough patch because since the age of 10, I was known as Taj the football player. And that's what opened up a lot of doors for me. That's what got me, love and admiration and respect because I was good at my sport. And then I found myself 12, 13 years later at the age of 22, 23, coming out of college, finishing my college football career, no opportunities to play professional ball. And I was just lost. I'm like, I don't even know who I am outside of a football jersey. So what am I supposed to do now? And it's actually pretty common amongst former athletes just to be so attached to the athletic identity that when you're done playing, you just have no clue what's next. So it's very, very common. And that's why I really decided to kind of step up and be the light at the end of the tunnel, so to speak, or the person that I needed in my corner when I was going through those challenges.
Yeah. So for you, was it very difficult for you to kind of cultivate into your purpose after being an athlete? Because I know that they probably figure out after this, what do I do? How am I significant? What is my purpose? Did you struggle with that, or do you deal with that? Do you struggle with that often?
Definitely. I struggled with it for a long period of time. It wasn't until I actually founded Thrive After Sports and started doing all the other things I'm doing with that, where I actually felt like I'm excited to wake up out of bed every day again and kind of compete with myself, most importantly, with the man in the mirror, the same way I did with football. But to answer your question, there was those years of struggle that I mentioned because I was aimless. I was just like, okay, I'm back home from college. I got to get, out of my childhood bedroom. That was a weird place for me to be back in my childhood bedroom, looking at all my little Pop Warner trophies. And, my mom is telling me to take out the trash. Like, it was weird coming out of college to be back in that place, almost at square one, not where I saw myself. And over time, I was able to get back on my feet, make some money, move out the house, but I wasn't fulfilled. I was just only working for money. And once I started to look internally, and this is what I tell athletes, you don't want to be just on Indeed all day trying to find, where's my purpose? What am I supposed to be doing? It starts internally. And that's what I did for myself. I said, how do I want to serve? How do I want to show up in the world? Who do I want to be? Which ultimately led me to wanting to work with former athletes, which led to forming Thrive After Sports, and led to me being in my purpose and operating in my gifts every single day.
Well, that makes sense. And but now that you said that about your mother, how did your relationship change with your family, with your friends?
Oh, it's so much better these days. That's a great question. It even just kind of warmed me up a little bit to think about it when you ask that question, because I say that because when I first came back home from college, and I know a lot of athletes can relate to this, I didn't know how to articulate to them what I was going through, but there was some depression and anxiety going on. Anxiety about my future, depression about like where I was at and what I was going to do and how I was going to make something of myself. Because I went through all those 4 years of school, and I thank God my education was paid for. But just to come home and be an unemployed college grad, living back in my childhood bedroom, like, that's a big fall from grace, playing under the lights and on a big stage, playing college football. So the relationship was strained at that time because they would be like, hey, we know, including my brother. My brother was living back home at the time too. And he was like, I know something's going on with you, but you just hang out in your room all the time. You don't even come out and really talk to us unless it's dinner time and stuff. So the relationship was strained because I was isolating myself. Whereas now, and that's, I'm sure we could go deep on that one, but the relationship is better now because I'm operating in my gift. I'm a happier person. And it really started with me communicating with them what I was experiencing. All the stuff I just shared with you, I shared that with them. Hey, I'm depressed. I don't really know what I'm doing. I feel like a loser. And just opening up that dialogue brought us closer together. And for me to be operating in my gifts, I know they're happy to see me, rising above and soaring now. So our relationship is stronger than ever across the board with my family.
Yeah. I noticed when I was going through a certain situation and I kind of isolated myself, I thought that no one understood the way I was feeling or what just happened to me. Did you actually reach out to people in your family to kind of talk about the way you were feeling and why you were isolating yourself, or you really just your feelings just took a back seat and you just dealt with it? How did you deal with that?
Um, it's so funny that you bring that up. It was not funny, but it's interesting you bring that up because that's what a lot of us do. No matter what you've been through, if you are
Right.
depressed, we're so quick. Um, let's be real, especially in black and brown communities, we're taught to kind of, hey, the world's gonna beat you up, so you got to be tough and shoulder through. You can't show
Yes.
weakness.
Right.
So I think so many of us, like you said, we do isolate ourselves, and it I was numbing what I was going through. I was drinking a lot at the time and just doing whatever to distract myself from my reality at the time. So once I started opening up and talking to them, it did make a world of difference for me, just because I was able to get it off my chest. And I always encourage people, like a lot of people are hesitant to go to a therapist or whatnot. But I always say, look, you got your family and people who love you right around you, or just friends. Start with them. You don't necessarily have to go to a therapist. Start with them, or start with your relationship with God. Talk to God. Even if you're not a
Hmm.
religious person, just, journal or do whatever makes you feel like you can get the stuff out, because it's dangerous when it only exists up here. If you can get it
Yes.
out, you're not carrying the burden anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. So do you think that you have changed from in college and being an athlete until now and being a leader that you are? Do you think that you really dramatically changed or changed a little bit?
Oh, dramatically, because in college, I mean, I was, I always tell people in college, I was just happy to be there, happy to get my education paid for, happy to be playing football. Um, I wouldn't consider myself like a leader at all. I didn't really honestly grow up till probably the past 2 or 3 years when I was like
Hmm.
27. I'm 30 now. So, but it's a dramatic change. And that's because I'm intentional about, like I was saying earlier, I'm intentional about who I want to be, where I'm going, who I want to serve, and how I show up in the world. And so because of that, I'm able to make quantum leaps in who I am and my development and my leadership and everything else I do, because I work on it. I train
Hmm.
it just like I train my body when I work out. So same
Yeah.
concept.
Hmm. So how now that you grew up and you know more about life now, um, how can you encourage the young athletes to really just not just get lost in the game, but also to feed your mind, feed your spirit, so you won't get wrapped up into all the other things outside of just the game?
Yeah, that's such a great question. And I always tell, so my work is focused primarily on the athletes who are done playing. So I'm like, okay, now that you don't have practice and film and games and travel and training, now you have this window that's opened up where you can actually start to create that next chapter. But what I
Hmm.
tell young athletes, whether college, high school, or even youth sports who are still playing, I like to share with them, like, every kid who plays sports after a certain level has the ambition to play professionally, and that's plan A. And so a lot of people feel like if you're focused on plan B, that it takes away from plan A. Like, oh, just in case I don't make it pro, I want to start thinking about this. A lot of people don't like to entertain that, but what I say is, like, you have to realize, even if you do make it to the professional level, even the professional career is going to end at some point, whether you
Yes,
get
I
cut or
agree.
you get. That's exactly it. And so I say,
Yeah,
you just want to start thinking about that. Look, I want you to make it pro. I want you to have a 10-year, 20-year professional career. But even when that's over, you got to start thinking about what it is that you want to do. And you have to be intentional about actually preparing for that and starting to cast the vision for what it is that you want, not just for money, but like, how do you see yourself serving in the world and being fulfilled? And who do you actually want to be? Not just how you're going to go get a check when you're done playing your
yeah.
sport. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, how easy is it for young athletes to really fall out of line with the game and to not getting wrapped up into the publicity of just football?
Well, that's a good question, especially now with NIL laws, the name, image, and likeness, where athletes can be compensated at the college level. Um, it's a challenge. It's always been a challenge. I don't think it's going to be any easier. I think you have to have good people in your corner who are sort of supporting you through that.
Yeah,
And realistically, not all of us are fortunate enough to have those people. Sometimes you have to seek them out.
right.
It's very important to keep a level head and stay balanced, because I'll just talk about the college level for a second. Like, you have to
Okay.
stay focused on your classes, performing in whatever your sport is, and also managing your relationships. And all three of those areas are important, but you also have to manage yourself, and that's the most important area. So before
Mm-hmm.
you manage all those other three areas I just mentioned, you got to be managing yourself, and that goes back to what you just said about not getting too caught up in the fame or the publicity or making money or all that other stuff, but being grounded in who you are and what you stand for. If that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah. And it makes you think too, when you get into that different arena, you really have to have strong ethics. If you don't, they're going to weaken. Did you struggle with really keeping your ethics, or it was easy for you?
It was a challenge. I wouldn't even say well, okay, yeah. To be completely transparent, so I played football at Stony Brook University, which is in New York. So I was a California kid in New York, and I was a football player. So that brought a lot of attention from women, of course, college girls. And then, of course, with college, it's the first time as an 18-year-old kid that you're away from home, out of the
Yeah.
nest, and you're like living like an adult. So I think my first 2 years were a joke. I wasn't taking school seriously. I was just living it up, partying, happy to be away from home. So it's very challenging. You know what I mean? And
Mhm.
there's a lot of things that can pull you down if you're not careful. I'm not saying don't enjoy your college years and have fun, but make sure you have some balance and you're not doing more bad than good. So
Mhm.
yeah, it took me a while to mature a little. I didn't, like I said, I didn't mature until 27, realistically. But even in
Mhm.
college, I wasn't. It took me to like junior year to be like, oh, I should probably make sure I'm staying on top of my grades so I can actually graduate. Like, that type of stuff is what I dealt with.
Mhm. So let's talk about the peer pressure. Did you have a lot of peer pressure in college versus high school, or did it drastically change now that you're an adult? You could do things on your own. Was the peer pressure more heavy in college, or it wasn't? Or you just had a mission and you were fine, or really did you struggle with that?
You know what? It wasn't. I'm not someone who's ever really succumbed to peer pressure,
Hmm.
so I can't speak on that personally because all the stuff that I just talked about, not staying on top of my grades and partying too much and just spreading myself thin, messing with a whole bunch of women. That was stuff that I was doing to myself. Nobody was pressuring me to do any of that. Now, I will say, because I have strong willpower, once I started to switch gears, like junior year, and I was like, I need to get on top of my grades so I can graduate, I was able to stand up to that peer pressure. Like, there would be people in my dorm room or, at the house pre-gaming and getting ready to go out. And I'm like, I gotta get this paper done. Like,
Right.
they would be, come on, Taj, just come out with us, man. You don't come out anymore. Like, I have to get this done or I'm not going to graduate. So, but I will say to those um, who struggle with giving in to peer pressure, and this is in any setting or any stage of life, just make sure you understand what your boundaries are and what you're committed to, because you're not going to be able to withstand the peer pressure if you don't even know where you're going or what your boundaries are. So you have to have those clearly defined for yourself first before you can resist peer pressure. Like I said, my boundaries were, listen, I'm not going to go out, Thursday through Sunday anymore like I once did, drinking and partying, and I'm going to get my work done so I can graduate. So because my boundaries were defined, I could say, these are my boundaries. This is what I'm doing. This is what I'm focused on. I'm not going out drinking tonight. So, and you could take that in any area of life, not just college and stuff.
Right. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So as a community, how can we help our local or professional athletes to really just push them to keep the faith? What can we do to help support them while they're in the game? Mentally, physically, not financially, but just more so to help encourage them. What can we do as a society?
That's a great question. Well, you can grab my books. I'm just playing. I'm just messing with it. I'm just
I'm with
playing.
it.
You can have them listen to the podcast. In all seriousness, I really, I mean, the podcast, all that stuff is free. Even I send out free books all the time. I support myself financially through other ways, not off the backs of athletes. I've been
Hmm.
fortunate enough to be able to set myself up that way.
Yeah.
Um, but I think so if you're a coach, if you're the parent of an athlete, the sibling, significant other of an athlete, I just say, just always remind them that you value them or appreciate them for who they are as a human being, not just for whatever they're able to do when they have a jersey on. And also just kind of plant the seed or at least ask them, so what do when that ball bounces for the last time, or when you hang the cleats up, hang the jersey up, what do you see yourself doing? And then I also encourage people to challenge athletes on that, because a lot of them would just tell you, oh, I'm gonna get into real estate, or I'm gonna get into sales, and it's so money focused, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I always encourage them to think bigger than that. Think bigger than okay, well, if you want to get into sales to make a bunch of money, that's great, but what do you want to do with the money? That's challenging them on, like, who do you want to help with the money, and having a bigger goal and picture in mind. So does that answer your question? I feel like I went like
Yes,
20
it
different
does.
directions. Okay.
It
All
does.
right. All
So
right.
how do you think it's important for an athlete to have a faith system? I know we discussed, everybody's not believers, even though we want them to believe, but everybody's not believers, and it takes a process. So how important do you think an athlete really needs just to have just a faith system?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought this up, because it's funny, because before we were recording, I was telling you I don't necessarily consider myself a Christian, but am I a
Mm-hmm.
believer? Yes,
Mm-hmm.
100%. Do I
Mm-hmm.
believe in being obedient to God and just listening, not saying God and praying, God, can you give me a Mercedes and all that type of stuff? Like, what does God want from me? And listening to that and tapping into that and having a great relationship with God, no matter what your beliefs or religion are, you have to
Right.
acknowledge that there's something bigger than us going on. If you don't believe that there's something bigger that, number one, connects us as human
Right.
beings, and number two, governs us, like controls this whole everything that's going on out in the world. If you don't have that belief, you're just gonna be out here acting a fool, because you just think that you're the end all be all of the world or the universe, when in reality there is something bigger than us guiding us and connecting us all. And you have to humble yourself and make sure your connection with that force, that energy, that God is strong, so that you can be grounded and make the right decisions and not be so caught up in worldly things, but make sure you're operating in the spiritual world strongly as well, because that's what brings the results. When your foundation is grounded in
Yes.
God and your spirit, good things start to happen for you, because you're guided by something bigger than yourself. We're imperfect beings as humans, so you don't want to. You could probably help me out with this, Madam D. What's the scripture in the Bible that talks about? It's like lean not on your own understanding, but
I
you
don't
know
know
what
the
I'm talking.
verbatimly, but I know what you're saying. Yeah, lean not to thy own understanding. I don't know the exact
Mm-hmm.
scripture it is, but I understand what you're saying. Yeah.
Yep. And even
Yeah.
that statement alone, just lean not on your own understanding, that's exactly what I'm getting at. Like I said, we're imperfect beings. So if you're just relying on yourself, your own faculties, it's not always going to take you where you want to go. Most of the time, it
Yeah.
won't. So
Mm-hmm.
that's all I have to say about that.
Yeah. Yeah. Before I let you go, I want to tap on something really quick.
Mm-hmm.
If there was an athlete that was struggling right now with depression and they're contemplating suicide, they are on edge. What would you say to encourage them? What would you say if you were one on one with them? How would you encourage them not to commit suicide?
Wow. Wow. I would say um, keep in mind that it's a long life that we live, and life in itself is full of ups and downs as it is. So, whatever season you're in that has you feeling suicidal right now, you're feeling that low. And trust me, I've been there. Um, I wasn't actually going to go through with it, but you know, and I'm sure you've experienced this too, Madam D. Sometimes you just hit a low that's so bad that the thought
Yes. Yeah.
of suicide crosses your mind.
Mm-hmm.
You're like, wow, I never thought I would even be having these types of thoughts.
Right.
But what I would say is that you have to remember, because life is up and down, just know that better times are coming. Just because you're in a season where you feel like taking your own life, it doesn't mean you're going to feel like that for the rest of your life. So if you just give up on the game of life and take yourself out, you're not giving yourself a chance to experience the good times that are ahead as well. And on top of that, just so it's not all about you, you have to think about the impact that has on other people. It's selfish. If you take yourself
Yeah.
out of the game, you're being selfish to the people who could have benefited from you just being you,
Yes.
whatever that looks like. Not just in this season, but you never know. You might have. Imagine this: if I were to have taken myself out and committed suicide when I was 23, 24, going through my depression, then I wouldn't be sitting here at the age of 30 having impacted thousands, and eventually I'm going to go on, I'm speaking this to existence, millions of athletes.
Yes.
If I would have forfeited that opportunity at the age of 23, 24, I'm not sitting here at 30 having an impact on thousands of athletes today. So that's something you have to keep in mind. You never know how your life is going to unfold. Don't give up on where you're at. Understand that better times are coming, and talk to somebody about it too. Just talk to somebody. Get it off your chest. Um,
Right.
Yeah, that's what I would say about that. That's such a good question. Whew.
Oh, yes. Taj, thank you so much for coming on Stopping the Silence. You have blessed us. I know you're going to bless so many people and continue to bless so many athletes, former and present athletes. Thank you for what you do. You are needed, and I want to encourage you to keep on moving forward. And thank you.
Thank you, Madam B, for not only for having me on the show, but for all the work that you do and for sharing yourself with your audience and your listeners, and for sharing yourself with me. What you shared with me before we recorded, um, it really got me re-present to why you do what you do. So I'm grateful for who you are as a human being and for the work you do in the world. And I'm glad we connected. And I'm grateful that we had this time together. So thank you too. I appreciate you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you all for coming on another episode of Stopping the Silence. Don't forget to visit our website at www.stopping-silence.com, and you can see all our beautiful episodes there. And remember that you are not alone. See you on next Sunday. My God bless you. Stopping the Silence. Bye.